Hi, it's Sarah, Annika, and Emily here at the Lotus Collaborative Health and Recovery Center.
And we're here to raise awareness about eating disorders and talk to people about recovery.
So come on in.
So we are here to interview Liz from Outreach and Katie the therapist to find out more about eating disorders.
So you want to kind of get a better sense of how people, like when clients come in, kind of how they're doing and what it's like for them, and then how we, like what the work looks like that we do with them.
Yeah.
Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know how much Liz told you, but clients come to us in lots of different ways. Some people refer themselves, some people get referrals from their doctors, or some people have family or friends that are really concerned and maybe contact us and gather some information and then share it with the particular person. Typically how it works is we offer free assessments. So any person who's interested in coming in for treatment can schedule an assessment with Dr. Elizabeth Esselin, and she will spend an hour or two, or kind of however long it takes, just kind of getting a better sense of what's going on for that person and what they're struggling with and kind of what their needs are, and then really decide whether the treatment that we offer is an appropriate fit, or maybe if they need something that's a little bit different. And so once they start, it's kind of, they're like right in there, treatment looks like many things. Each client works with a dietitian, so really we're focusing on a meal plan, getting enough nourishment, really just understanding more about fears and phobias and anxiety around food and mealtime. Every client has an individual therapist that they meet with on a regular basis, and do kind of, work with them about the eating disorder behaviors in particular, and then also like what's underlying the eating disorder, and kind of getting a better sense of that, so that we can really help people understand what the purpose of the eating disorder has been, and then start to recognize healthier ways that they can take care of themselves and meet the needs that the eating disorder was kind of helping meet, but in a not so healthy, not sustainable kind of a way.
What do you mean by those needs? Like, what are some of the underlying things that cause eating disorders?
A variety of things can kind of be things that perpetuate an eating disorder. I would say the needs are, emotional needs. Like a lot of people have struggle with kind of, being told or learning that they're allowed to have feelings and they're allowed to express them. And so an eating disorder sometimes can come in and be a way to kind of push those feelings down and numb them out, so that then they feel like, oh, I'm okay in the world. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But in actuality, we're all allowed to have feelings, right? And we're allowed to talk about them and express them. And so that's like one example of some of the needs that can be met in a different way. We really work with clients to really have more of a voice. So just to really speak to anything and everything. Oftentimes along with an eating disorder comes not really speaking your truth, or being able to say like, I don't like that, or no, I don't want to do that, or yes, I'm really interested in that. Kind of being able to develop that part of someone. Another thing we work a lot with is like setting boundaries in relationships. Oftentimes that can be a challenge for folks who have eating disorders. Just really, again, that assertiveness and not using your voice, and kind of knowing where my needs are and kind of where yours are, and having healthy boundaries between the two. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So it goes a lot deeper than just wanting to be thin or just wanting to be
Absolutely.
skinny.
There's Yeah, and I think that's
an assumption that most people make.
Yeah, I think it's a myth, and just I think there's a lot of. I mean, it's so great you all are coming in and wanting to learn more because I think this is so crucial. There's really a lack of education.
Yeah.
I kind of think it mirrors the eating disorder. So there are a lot of secrets in folks who have eating disorders. Hiding, shame, guilt, lots of stuff like that. So I think as our community and our culture talks more and more about eating disorders and gets educated and shares that education, there'll be less of a need maybe to have so many secrets. I think that's an idealistic idea, but I really think there's definitely a lot deeper than the superficial. The exterior really is just a way to manage and kind of soothe and make the internal stuff that just feels not good and in pain, to kind of manage it and soothe it, through the external, and it's kind of an attempt to feel better, but it's an attempt that never really gets the result that person is looking for.
Is that why you think that they turn to eating disorders instead of some other way of handling their emotions because it's something they can control?
I think you could say that, and I also think it's kind of we know what we learned, we know what we were taught. So some folks, if you don't learn, hey, it is okay for me to have a voice. I can talk about how I feel. I can be a young woman who has a lot of feeling all the time, and that's okay. I mean, if the message you get is that's not okay, then it's kind of everyone looks, well, how do I cope with there's something wrong with me? And so everyone kind of copes, and different people cope in different ways. And so people who have struggle with eating disorders, it's just like anyone else. It's just an attempt to cope that ends up in a place that no one ever kind of enters into an eating disorder saying, yes, I want to do this to myself. It's I'm not feeling good. I want to try and do something that'll help me feel better. And the path it leads to is one that doesn't ultimately feel better in the long term anyways.
Do you find that after treatments, people are more willing to kind of make that statement yes, I've been doing this and it's been harming me, and do you think it's an easy thing to come to that conclusion, or?
I think it varies on lots of different variables. I think it's very possible. I see it happen here all the time. Between education and therapy, and we do a lot of group work. So there's a lot of community, and there's a lot of shared experience, and really learning from each other and growing from each other. So absolutely, there is the ability to gain the insight that, hey, I was doing this and I thought it was going to get me where I wanted to go, i.e. the eating disorder, and now wait, I'm learning a lot and realizing, wait, no, that's not actually getting me what I want. The hard part is just, it is the actual work, the day-to-day, the insight and awareness is so important, and then it's just, recovery we talk a lot about is just day by day, moment by moment, really just coming back to, the healthier coping skills. How can you really address your life and face your life and use these healthier coping skills? The eating disorder can give a really short-term relief. The things we're teaching give more long-term, sustaining, lifelong relief. So that's the hard part right there, is how does one kind of turn away from something that gives that short-term relief, but then on the other side makes you feel worse, to working, using kind of skills that really, really work, but you have to feel a little bit more. And sometimes, it's challenging. But people do it here all the time, and it's pretty incredible to watch.
Do you think once they come out of the treatment, is there a possibility that they'll kind of relapse and maybe start those habits again? Do you find that you guys have a lot of maybe second-time patients or patients who have come and then needed to receive treatment again after?
Mm-hmm. It again, I'm probably going to say this many times. It varies. You know, some clients, it really just depends on where that person is. You know, in their kind of cycle of motivation to change. So, are they in a place where, you know, they're here, they're ready, they're really willing, and they're able to kind of take on those skills? Some people need more care. Some people can go through treatment here and then transition. So when people go to treatment here, they don't leave and they're like done. It really is, they transition to more of an outpatient team. That's kind of what shows most long-term success. So they would maybe, for example, transition to like having a therapist they see weekly, a dietitian they work with, maybe they go to a group of some sort, but they're not in a program on a daily basis. Like they're essentially in their life. But people recover. You know, how long that takes and what that looks like. We all get asked that question by clients all the time. And it's one of those questions that, you know, is there's no definitive answer, but what I do know is it is possible. What I do know is I see it happen. And what I do know is the treatment that we offer here and other treatment programs really help. They really provide kind of a roadmap as to how to heal from this.
Do you find that most of your clients are girls or guys, or is it a fair balance between the two?
So I've been here for 6 months, and in the time I've been here, it's been female clients that have been here. I know we just opened a treatment center in San Francisco, and I know right now I believe they have a male and a female client. So I would say, and I believe the statistics even point to this, that more often women are seeking out treatment than men are. However, that does not dictate that more women than men suffer with an eating disorder. It really just more speaks to a cultural issue.
And I feel like a good amount of guys are kind of afraid to maybe admit that they have that weakness, because guys are kind of supposed to be the strong ones, and I feel like that pressure kind of starts at a young age too, in high school especially.
I would imagine you guys see
a lot.
Smothering of like emotion. Obviously isn't healthy.
And I think those, like I said, like there are a lot of larger cultural issues that kind of sociocultural issues that contribute to why do a lot of people not know about what eating disorders are, you know? So I'm sure there's something there too around gender.
So if you were to give like a one sentence or couple sentence description of what an eating disorder is, what would you like, just for our class? So that
no pressure.
Take your time.
1 or 2 sentences. You know, I hear Dr. Esselin say this a lot, that like an eating disorder is an indication that there's something out of alignment, that there's something that needs your attention. I would add that the eating disorder comes in as like an attempt to cope with whatever's out of alignment or whatever is kind of needing attention. And like I said before, that attempt to cope is it's pure, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no judgment or blame or shame. It just is, and the result is kind of learning and finding out, like, this is not what I was hoping that it was going to be. So, yeah. Is that good?
Yeah.
What made you want to become a therapist, especially for this sort of problem?
Well, I've always kind of wanted to be a therapist, so that just took soul searching through my 20s to realize, no, this is what I want to do. And then eating disorders in particular, I think both personal and professional experiences, people in my life, exposure to it, and Really coming here and seeing the work that the Lotus Collaborative does and the way in which they do it. There's a lot of love and there's a lot of warmth and there's a lot of community, and that's crucial to kind of bringing someone out of the isolation and secrecy of an eating disorder. So I think this environment and this place in particular, coupled with my own interests personally and professionally, led me to want to give it a shot. And it's been good. So kind of connected to why did I get involved in being an eating disorder therapist in the first place. When I was in high school, my girlfriends and I, it was very clear that eating disorders were prevalent and no one was talking about it. And so one of the things that inspired me was having a place to have a voice about any issue that's going on in any of our lives, in particular adolescence. You know, being a teenager is not easy, and there's nothing shameful about having an eating disorder. There's nothing to feel scared or ashamed of in terms of talking about it. So the one thing I would say is just put a voice to it. Say something. Reach out to someone who you trust, whether it's a friend or a teacher or a counselor at school or a family member. Just say something. Don't carry the secret around alone, and reach out for help. There's a lot of help in your community, and there are resources out there, so just don't be alone in it.
I mean, you know, it's similar to you all at this age, right? Mm-hmm. Who is a bigger influence on you right now, your parents or your friends?
Our peers, yeah.
You know, it's really like, I could come in and do classroom outreach and be like, love your body and love yourself, and it's cool to be, you know, empowered and all that, but really it's I think the greatest influence is whoever your peer is. And so that's part of the, I think, magic, for lack of a better word, that happens at treatment centers and ones that are well facilitated, is that you have, it's a group setting and you see other people that are struggling with the same things you're struggling with. And particularly here we have therapists who have recovered themselves. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a huge part of why people feel comfortable here and why we, you know, are good at what we do. But yeah, it's people getting to see that they're not alone. Mm-hmm. And that these thoughts that are going through their head and these feelings that are compulsing them to do these behaviors that they know are not good for them. You know, that other people have those experiences and that other people have recovered and that other people have, you know, walked the same path that they've walked. So I think that that's very, very true.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a specific reason why you chose to join this sort of organization and why you decided to help?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I will just speak to my own high school experience. That was not easy. It was probably one of, like, and that's not to say that only, you know, young adolescents suffer from eating disorders. Women of all ages are suffering. But what brought me here is just that feeling of feeling so uncomfortable in your body at such a young age. And my hope is to create a social movement to where that's different, to where it's different for my son growing up and other young people, because it was just a really traumatic time for me in my life. So I didn't have a full-blown eating disorder, but I would say that I didn't have a healthy relationship with food and, you know, just wasn't making great choices, and a lot of that revolved around the messages I was getting about my body and that, you know, it's not good enough, it's not perfect, those kinds of things. So yeah, go ahead.
So do you think that eating disorders are most common in like younger women, like adolescents, or what age do you think?
Yeah, so there's been some studies recently out that they're now starting at a younger and younger age. So whereas before, you know, maybe we wouldn't see these types of behaviors pop up until like I don't know, 17, that kind of age range. They're starting to find that it's happening girls that are like in 5th grade, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, we could mention social media. I think that there's part of that is we're so saturated with Facebook and the internet and media. It's a part of the way we do everything, and so it's hard to keep young people from, you know, getting those messages, and especially at a young age when we're all such a like media driven and we're a media driven society, and we're at a really vulnerable age, and we're, you know, when I was young we didn't have computers in 4th grade. You know, there was no Facebook, there wasn't a way, there was no cell phone where I was like constantly getting messages about whether I was hot or not, you know, and I still struggled in high school, so I can only imagine how it is now, you know.
Yeah.
Like, that seems so stressful to me.
Yeah. So you do believe that that's like a big influence on young girls, especially in like people of all ages, the way that women are portrayed, and well, basically everyone is portrayed in the media.
Right. There's just so many stereotypes that we have accepted and that we continue to, you know, reinforce. Like, men need to be a certain, you know, height and strong and, you know, capable and aggressive and, you know, intimidating almost. And women have to be thin, and we really idolize that. And the thinner the better. And it's, and fat is bad, you know. So I don't want to say that media is the sole cause of eating disorders, because that just wouldn't be true. I don't think that we really know why, and especially because we see there's so many different reasons why eating disorders happen. But it's not helping, and I think it's taking a young person that otherwise might not have gone that route, but they have certain susceptibilities, you know, biologically speaking, and then they're inundated with these messages, and it you know, it triggers an unhealthy response. And without the support of their peers or the support of their family, you know, it just can lead to worse and worse things. So.
What do you think started it for you at a young age? Like, started your
Like,
not necessarily eating disorder, but just bad habits, or maybe seeing yourself in it?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard to pinpoint for me, and especially because it was such a long time ago. I remember more the emotions than the actual, like, physicality of what actually happened, you know? I just remember feeling sad and lonely and just inadequate in my own body. But I'm sorry, what, like, you're asking why do I think it started?
Yeah, how and why? Just because now I can see it in the way women are portrayed through social media, but that wasn't necessarily such a big thing when you were young, so I was wondering if...
I mean, I would say by the time I was in high school, I think it was just, you know, I might not have been as inundated with it, but, you know, we had magazines. So we didn't, you know, we still had, supermodels have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And the idea that thin is what's good and thin is what's beautiful, and better has also been, you know, kind of, I mean, it was definitely, that's how I felt it. Yeah, I think it's this message that it's a story that we somehow start to tell ourselves, and then we fool ourselves into believing it. And then, yeah, it gets stuck in your head, and unless you, I mean, for me, what really changed my relationship, I think, was a combination of just education and then age. Like, just kind of growing up and realizing that I am my own authority on my beauty, and, you know, I'm beautiful for all these other reasons that have nothing to do with this body that I have. And yeah, but I mean, it's different for me because an eating disorder is very much you know, it's mental illness. So where it was easy for me to be like, I look great, you know, like I don't need to feel these things, and I don't need to obsess about my food, and I'm just going to eat what I want when I want and eat when I'm hungry. That was an easy, you know, corner for me to turn, but for something that takes root at a very young age and becomes a full-blown eating disorder, it's a different path. It's not quite so simple. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. Do you think education and getting kids educated at a young age is really something helpful?
I think, yeah, okay, so this is really interesting because I have a mission in this position to really try and create some kind of social change. And I'm wondering, like, what's the best way to do that? You know, what's really going to make an effect? And I don't think that necessarily educating about eating disorders, like, I don't think we need a class, you know, letting y'all know what bulimia or anorexia is or orthorexia is or any of, you know, it's not that there's a lack of awareness that we know what an eating disorder is, that we know what they are. It's kind of like the DARE program, like when I was a kid, they came in and taught us all about drugs, but that doesn't make you say no. You know, I think what makes you say no and what makes you I think what could have an impact is like emotional intelligence and teaching kids at a young age, like that it's cool to love yourself, that it's cool to have respect for your body. And I don't know exactly how we do that, but I want to try. And like maybe some kind of leadership program where, you know, motivated students who care like y'all's and are learning tools to then bring it onto their campus so that you guys are the ones spreading this message and getting girls to join your, you know, leadership club of like positive body image. Right. And it's like maybe somebody like me comes in and teaches the really motivated ones who have an interest, and then as peers you can spread it because it's going to just be so much more powerful.
Yeah, rather than teachers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I honestly don't think that like a class solely dedicated to like some kind of emotional development would hurt, especially when they're younger, because you're so much more open. And you know, you watch all these, I read all these things that so many issues that we carry as adults start as children, right? And a lot of eating disorders too. Some kind of trauma has impacted them, or you know, something that, and then the disorder of eating just so happens to be a coping mechanism. This is how they make those feelings go away. This is how they cope with so much things that have nothing to do with body, have nothing to do with food.
Right.
But it starts when we're so little because we're so vulnerable. And so if we can somehow, I don't know, intervene at that point, you know, as opposed to like this, like, I don't know, I remember health class being so just kind of dry and a little pointless, and you're like, okay,
pyramid,
right, you know, and I don't know if that's more of like a government thing where there's certain standards and criteria, we have to teach them these things and we check off the box and that's how we get through our day, but I would love to see like a revamping of health class.
Right, yeah.
Because really what makes you say no to drugs, what makes you say no to underage sex and to wearing a condom and to like all these things that I think that me as a parent will be anxious about when my son's that age, and you know that I think that all parents have anxieties about their kids, is respecting yourself, you know, is having that like I'm so awesome, and I not a cockiness, or you know, that's not what I mean, but just a self-love, like a righteous self-love that makes you be like, I don't have to do that because I am cool. I don't need your approval, you know.
And I think that's kind of hard to find naturally at this age because kids are so used to just like tearing each other down, and I mean I see it still, and I saw it. Like, all I wanted to do was fit in, and I wanted boys to like me. I thought I had to look a certain way and act a certain way, but it's all about, I think it's more important that you love yourself as a person and that you're happy.
Well, and I mean, would it hurt to start sending that message when we're in 4th grade? And if we got it every year, And you know, I mean, and then maybe that becomes the boring thing. It's like, yeah, we know, we're not mean to each other anymore. It's not whatever, we're free. But like, great, let it become that like roll your eyes class that health class is now. But I think it could make a difference, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
Anything starting as young as like 4th grade would be like beneficial since the age group has like gone down. Like
I do.
Oh.
I do. I think that it's going to look different, you know, how it looks, how we would start in 4th grade to how it looks in high school. You know, those are 2 different kind of like emotional developmental stages. But I don't think it's ever too early to teach self-love and to teach each other to be nice, you know, to like that it's not cool to put down your best friend in front of this other person, that doesn't make people like you more. And this might sound like so far from eating disorders, but it's all related. You know, that emotional like connection and like that's all we really want, is to feel connected, to feel like we have friends, to feel like people love us, to feel like we're supported. And I think when you can isolate kids away from maybe their comfort like peer circle, and which is what happens in classrooms, right? You're not always with your friends. Sometimes you're just like, and somehow break them into smaller groups. You know, you really get to see that everybody feels those same feelings. Everybody's feeling that vulnerability. Everybody's feelings have been hurt, and maybe they've participated in the same kind of negative behavior, and you know, it just kind of brings us down to that same level. And if we had classroom time dedicated to that from the age of whatever on through, I just think we'd be better off, and that will make a bigger difference than me coming in and trying to talk about, you know, signs and symptoms of bulimia. And also, like, I do want to say one more thing, is that something, and I don't have the answer exactly, but some kind of education on how to have those hard conversations with your friends. Because I feel like I knew friends that I felt, you know, that maybe you do know that they're growing up, or you notice they have lost X amount of pounds or binge eating or whatever, and you see it, but you don't talk about it because there's so much shame around eating disorders and our body, right? We feel so shameful of it. And some kind of like education on sort of how do you have those hard conversations with a peer? Because that's who you're going to hear it from, right? Mom could come in and be like, "You need to eat your food." And that's the last thing that's going to help.
right.
Not to say parents don't have a role, because I think that's like the people who come out of this are the ones that parents are huge to the recovery process. I think one of you had asked about that.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Involved, like maybe if a parent doesn't really understand what's going on, or isn't really seeing
The problem.
necessarily. Yeah.
How do you that's a good question. I mean, the sooner you have parent involvement, the better, because you know they're going to be your biggest resource. Like, they're the ones who want to see their parents have this infinity amount of love for their children, like want to see them do better, and you know, and they're also just humans, right? They're also just people who have X amount of history of trauma or whatever happened in their childhood and their life that they bring to this raising of their child. And so I think that maybe it's going to take a friend to bring it to the family's attention if they're not willing to see it. But in the end, with proper like professional intervention, the family that I've seen is always going to eventually be on board. Right? They may not know, they might have the tools to want to deal with it, but with professional help, they will, and they can, and they always do. I mean, what I've seen, parents will always rise to the occasion of wanting to get their children better. And I think that it's kind of sad. There's a lot of, I think, talk out there that, like, you know, parents are the cause of the eating disorders, which is just not true. I personally have not found that. I think that if without help and intervention, that it can be, there can be some mixed communication and messages that are not serving the person with an eating disorder, but it's because people aren't willing to bring it out on the table and want to fix it and want to talk about it.
I'm curious on how, once someone is like diagnosed and they do have an eating disorder, how does the intervention process work? Like, how do they go along that process of like learning about themselves?
Like, how does treatment work?
Yes.
I probably wouldn't be the best person. I mean, I can tell you, I mean, I'm probably not the best person to answer that question just because I don't work directly with the clients here. I mean, I know we do group therapy, and I can tell you that we do family therapy and, you know, individual, and we have a dietitian and the kind of like the structure of it, but the actual inner workings I think is much different than just what it sounds like me saying, you know. Probably I could definitely get an answer from one of our therapists that we could probably.
Okay, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
That's really interesting
Kind of
how that works.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there definitely has to be, you know, you don't necessarily, and this is weird to say, but I don't think a lot of people at first want to recover, you know, because, like I said, it's something they've used as a coping skill for however long, and it's safe, and it feels good, and it's keeping them, you know, or what they perceive as like whole and sane, and it's like this, it's like their friend. So, yeah, I think overcoming that barrier is a big, big step in treatment. Is actually moving to that point where you want to recover, and then it's just day by day.
So a lot of like emotional changes in the person themselves, and like discovering that you want to change and then trying to figure out how to. Basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And for us, it's like, you know, we are an intensive outpatient and PHP, which just means like we're that mid step between just having like your therapist that you go and see and talk to maybe weekly or monthly or however often, and then being in a residential where there's 24-hour surveillance because you need that level of care. So we're right in the middle, and we're really trying to we're trying to get clients at a stabilizing point to minimize behaviors. And so there's the emotional work is definitely there because you have to do that. Just it's not like a neat little box where it's like, oh, we treat this and then we treat this and then, you know, nobody fits into those boxes. So every journey of recovery is going to be different and look different. But I guess what I'm trying to say is we're getting them to a point where hopefully they can then have their outpatient therapy, but there's still going to be years of work to do, usually. You know, it's something that it's not like you get rid of the eating disorder. It's always a part of you, and you're always working towards recovery and giving yourself skills and reasons as to why you don't do that, you know?
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you think with age it gets easier to live with it and to keep it under control? Or do you still see adults suffering?
Plenty of adults. But, you know, I think that with early intervention, yeah. You know, if you've come to us, if you decided to work on your eating disorder at the age of 17 versus 55, you know, the success rate is going to be way easier when you start here as opposed to here. Because if you've started here and then gone until, and we've had women, you know, of every age come, and it is much harder when you have, it's just a part of your life, right? You've made it this far. So early intervention, I think that's a lot with a lot of mental health issues. It's like catching it young and giving yourself the skills to live kind of in this world that we're in, right? Like, because we're working on changing the media. I think that there's a big backlash right now on like airbrushing and all that stuff, but it's still very much there. We're still, you know, Victoria's Secret models aren't gonna one day look like me, like you know, like
Yeah.
overnight. So
It's gonna take time.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. If you suspect that someone is suffering from an eating disorder, to have that conversation with that friend, you know, you definitely want it to be in a private one-on-one. I don't think group approaches are necessarily the best because it can make people feel cornered. But just even getting to that point where you're in a one-on-one situation with this friend and you voice your concern is, I know, a lot to ask at a young age. That it's uncomfortable, that it feels weird, and you know, it's easier just to avoid it, it's easier just to ignore it, but you can change that person's life. They will know that they're loved. They will know and one day recognize that you love them enough to notice, and that there's professionals out there who can help them, and the earlier that they can get help, the fuller of a life they can lead. That it doesn't have to be, that they're not alone, and that there's help.